Hello everyone. So in today's video, I wanted to share with you the houseplants that I think are the easiest to care for, aka the hardest plants to kill. And I think these plants are also the ones that are really great if you're just kind of starting out bringing houseplants into your house. Because if you get something that requires a lot of care and you're not used to that and you don't have experience and it dies, I don't want that to kind of put you off from bringing houseplants into your home. Now, I do not consider myself to be a houseplant expert, and I pretty much ignore my houseplants during the gardening season, other than watering them and fertilizing if I remember. And these are the plants I haven't killed despite all of that neglect. So I feel like if they can survive with the level of neglect I give them, they must be pretty good houseplants. So there's not really a ton that I'm gonna go over. I think just 4 main varieties, and then I will show you some of the fussier plants that I have and why, and then also kind of show you the ways that I'm using the plants in my space. But I figure I'll start off with, so 4 easy plants total, kind of 2 different categories. The first 2 I'm going to show you are the ones that if you forget that you have plants in your home, they probably prefer that because they don't need a lot of water. In fact, the only times that I've harmed these plants is because I provided them too much water and not too little water. And they also work really well without having bright direct light or a lot of optimal lighting. They can kind of work almost anywhere that you want to put them in your home as long as there's some sort of light source. But I have some of these plants in very low light areas and they continue to thrive. So the first plant that I have here, and I do have multiple of these in my home. This is the snake plant, which has also been known as mother-in-law's tongue. And something I want to start doing both with houseplants and garden plants is using the scientific name because that's something I'm learning about in my horticulture class. So I want to try to practice it. However, this one, which I used to know as Sansevieria, I don't think goes by that anymore. I think they changed the classification to Dracaena. So just to make it even more confusing, but pretty much I feel like snake plant is the most common name that I've heard for these. And when I first ever got houseplants in my home, I went into the local garden center and said, I have a low light area and I've never done this before, what do you recommend? And they recommended a snake plant for one of the 2 that I got. And something really helpful that they told me is that when you want to water a snake plant, don't just stick your finger in the top here, but stick your finger, not drop this on the floor, but stick your finger in the drainage hole. So if I stick my finger in the drainage hole right now, it is still damp. And if it feels damp when you touch it, don't water it. So this one I do have in a relatively small pot. I'd say it's maybe 5 inches in diameter, and it is terracotta, which means that it is more absorbing of the water than other types of plants, so they dry out faster in these pots. But I maybe water this once a month. I have one in a slightly larger pot downstairs that I often forget we have, so I water that maybe once every 2 months. And then I have a larger one out in that area that I'll show you in a little bit that I pretty much watered once every 3 months until I had a slight accident with a hose this summer, and it's still recovering from that. But this is a great plant if you have low light areas and you don't want to have to remember to care for your plant. Now, you don't want it to obviously dry out completely and die, but the less attention I feel like you show these plants, the better they do. So snake plant is definitely what I would consider one of my easiest plants to take care of. Most of the time, if I know someone that has killed this, it's from too much water. So do be careful about that. You don't want to overwater this plant because that'll get root rot in the plant and it will die. So get this if you want to have a plant that you can ignore. Next up, I have this ZZ Raven plant. So it's a ZZ plant. The variety is Raven because, as you can see, the leaves here are super dark, which I love. That's why I put it in this black pot, because I thought that looked really cool together. But this I would say I would put in a similar category as the snake plant, because this also doesn't need to be watered very often. I do water it more often than the snake plant. So let's say I water the snake plant once every month for the smaller pot. I do this maybe once every 3 weeks, and I just do it with sticking my finger pretty far down and seeing if it needs water. This one also can tolerate some low light. Again, from my experience, it seems to like slightly more light than my snake plant needs, but this also works really great in the low light areas. I think I only have 2 of these. So I have this one and then a traditional green one. They also grow super fast from my experience. I feel the snake plants don't grow quite as fast, or I don't notice it as much, but these I have noticed a lot of growth coming off of them. So I'll show you the other one too when we head out there. But the ZZ plant and the snake plant, I would say, are the two I would put in the category of you want to, again, forget that you have a plant and still make sure that they stay alive. So go for these if you are not the person that will give your plant too much attention. Now let me share two other ones that you need to water a bit more often. They like more light, but they still don't need like very, very bright light to do well, and they grow super fast. So let me grab the first one real quick. Actually, I'm not gonna grab it because it's right here. But this is a philodendron, and this one is the philodendron Brazil. You can tell that because it has the variegation on the leaves, which I really, really like. So the second category with my philodendron, and pothos will be the next plant. These are ones that I'd say you need to care for them, again, more often than the snake plant or the ZZ plant. I probably water these every 1 to 2 weeks, usually about 2 weeks in the winter, about every week in the summer. But again, I will always use my finger in the top of the soil, not the bottom, to make sure that it needs to be watered before I water it. But these plants also have worked really well. I've had them in rooms with just north-facing windows, and they continue to grow. I have them in here now, and this is west-facing. I have them in the east-facing, and I don't need to put them right next to the window to get light in order to grow. So these, I think, are really great. They also grow incredibly fast. This one I've trimmed multiple times, same thing with all of my pothos, and they seem to have more of a balance of if I give them a little too much love, they can bounce back from it, and if I give them, you know, not enough love, they tend to bounce back from it. So they seem to be also a lot more forgiving. Another thing with all of these plants that I'm showing you right now, and that I'll show you some that are doing the opposite, is they also don't mind the low humidity of Chicago winters indoors. I don't have any humidifiers running right now. I did last year. Now I'm using a spray bottle, but they don't get any like brown crispy edges like some of my plants do. They really don't need much, and they look really beautiful all of the time. So I've now shifted over slightly to my pothos that's hanging on the wall. I have a lot of pothos also, although I think all of the pothos I have, I think, are from 2 plants that I got originally and then just propagated. Great plants to propagate, very easy to propagate, both the pothos and the philodendron. So this one also grows incredibly quickly, again, super easy to care for. I like to use both pothos and philodendrons in like my home decor plants, if that makes sense. So instead of just a plant that's sitting in a pot somewhere looking pretty, these are the ones that I'll kind of incorporate a little bit more into the decor, like hanging on the wall, for example, although I need to do some upkeep on it once we repaint the room. Also, I have my kind of plant curtain that I'll show you with pothos and philodendron. Pothos grow long super quickly, but as you can see here, there's more space between the leaves. So I like philodendrons more when I want to like cover an area or give something a bit more thickness. They also work really great when they are together. Again, I've grown this also in a room with north-facing windows, which is where we get the least amount of sun where we are located, and they've done really well. So let me show you kind of all the plants that I have in here. I'll show you the pothos wall. We'll go into the other room. I'll show you the other of the 4 varieties that I've recommended that I have and how they're doing. And then, like I said, I'll show you some of the fussier plants that I have also. So this is this wall, which is completely covered in pothos vines from this plant here. I'd say it took about 2 years to get the vines this long. I have trimmed the vines, propagated them multiple times. I also have divided this one. I think I divided it last winter. So that's how I kind of kept it in the smaller pot, but it just grows so incredibly quickly. So here's like the pretty looking part. And then here is where I stopped any sort of maintenance, because when we paint in here, hopefully in a month, maybe it might be 2 months away, I need to take this off the wall, all the command hooks off the wall, and then get this room painted. But it just, I mean, it's incredible how fast this grows. And again, I don't do much. I water when it needs water. I do fertilizer about once a month, usually during the growing season. And it just, well, it just does this. So here is the other ZZ plant that I have, the one that is green, obviously. This is the one that, again, grows incredibly quickly. So it's on this side of the room. There's a window here, but as you can see, it's just a few feet away from a brick wall. So it's not like we get a ton of light. And then if I swing, we'll get back to that in a second. If I swing around here, you'll see that this is where the east-facing windows are. So the plant is on the complete opposite side of the room compared to the windows, and it still does really well. So I love that plant. Up here I have some of the pothos that are propagating. Now here's an example. I think this is a cordyline. I mean, it still does great, but the tips are a little bit brown because I need to get more humidity in this room. I try to remember to spray it. I don't always remember to spray it, but again, if you want something that requires you to not have to spray it and still look pretty, I would go for the plants that I've already mentioned. So this is my, what I call plant curtain with both pothos and philodendron vines, and I have trimmed it again multiple times. I just kind of trim it whenever it gets to the couch there. So that one looks really great. Don't mind my mess, but here is my other philodendron, one that's not variegated on the leaves, and it just looks so beautiful on this stand, the way that the vines trail down. And then over here, I have the snake plant that the hose got stuck on, and it basically poured a bunch of water into it, much more water than it needed. It was more droopy. It's now less droopy, so I don't think it's going to die, which is good. Here's another one that, again, it's not like it's incredibly fussy, but my polka dot begonia would also like more humidity. It's always fine in the summertime, but when we have the forced heat on in the winter, obviously that decreases the humidity in here by quite a bit. Back in here, I mean, other plants that I do love here, I have this peperomia, which is so cute. I love the leaves. I love the color, the texture, everything. But these like to be like kind of consistently moist and not to let them dry out as much as other plants. So I just have to be much more on top of watering this one. String of Hearts, probably my favorite houseplant because it's pink hearts. This one specifically, the variegated one. But I'm having trouble in here since we have either east or west facing sun exposure. I'm having a hard time finding places where it's really, really happy. So I'm actually just testing it out in here to see how it does. I used to have it right up close to the window in the other room, but it was just blocking everything in the way. It didn't really look aesthetically pleasing. Like it was just in that spot because it needed to be. But I'm gonna see how it does in here. Hopefully it does pretty well. So those are the plants that I consider to be the easiest plants to take care of, at least for me. So the snake plant, the ZZ plant, pothos, and the philodendron. Let me know if you have any other houseplants that you have that are incredibly easy to take care of. Again, the snake plant, if you want a plant that you only have to water like once every couple months, that is the one for you. If you want plants that trail and grow really quickly, pothos and philodendron might be the ones for you. I think I first saw a photo on Instagram of somebody that had a pothos trailing all over their walls before I ever had a pothos, and I was like, I need to do that. Also, let me know if you say pothos or pothos. Either way, let me know down below, again, your easy to care for plants, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.